everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. It has been quite some time since I have been in this filming setup, filming a sit-down video. I have been filming a lot of vlogs recently, but not a lot of just regular old sit-down videos, you know? So today I'm very excited. I just want to talk about books that I am absolutely obsessed with at the moment. I haven't made one of these videos so far this year. So these are books that I have read from the beginning of January to now, which is early April. I think I have about 10 books to talk about today, and I am just so excited to jump on into this video. But first things first, I did very recently post a new recent reads video that was a get ready with me style wrap up. So I did my full face of makeup that I'm wearing right now while chatting about like the last 20 or so books that I have read recently. So I would definitely recommend checking out that video if it sounds at all interesting to you. But yes, let's jump into these books that I just cannot stop thinking about. The first one is a Hermione fanfiction, or a Draco and Hermione fanfiction. I will link this down in the description below. I read this fic off of Archive of Our Own. That is the fanfiction website that I prefer to use. It's very user-friendly in terms of downloading fics onto your Kindle. But anyways, this, man, I can tell you guys right now, this is one of my top 5 favorite Hermione fics now, because there are so many amazing tropes that are some of my absolute favorite romance tropes. So in this fanfic, Draco and Hermione have been married for about a year or so at this point. They've been in a relationship for the past 5 or 6 years, and Hermione gets into an accident because her job is that she works with objects that have dark magic imbued in them, and so she basically removes the dark magic. And so there is this object that basically attacks her and she passes out, and when she wakes up in the hospital, they realize that she has amnesia and she has forgotten the last 6 years, meaning that she has forgotten the entirety of her relationship with Draco. So when she wakes up and she sees Draco, her husband, she still thinks of him as the boy that bullied them at Hogwarts. And so this totally is like a second chance marriage in trouble, amnesia romance, where Draco kind of has to convince Hermione to fall in love with him all over again. This was absolutely beautiful. It's a bit on the shorter side. I would say this was probably about like a 300-page fanfic, whereas like a lot of the popular fics are like 800 pages plus. So that's one of the things that I loved, is that like this wasn't too long. This wasn't stretched out by any means. I just adored how their relationship developed over the course of this fic. I thought that this had like the perfect amount of angst, the perfect emotional punch. I was so invested in this version of Draco and Hermione. I was rooting for them the whole time, you know, like this was just so beautiful. It definitely got me in my feels. I'm pretty sure I teared up a few times, and I'm so glad that Jessin from Jessin Reads Romance recommended this on her channel, because this one has been on my TBR for a while, but I don't think I would have picked it up as soon as I did had it not been for her recommendation. So yeah, this is absolutely amazing. There is a prequel to this called Beginning and End. I have also read that fic. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I don't think that that is the most necessary Hermione fic for you to read. It wouldn't be my top recommendation, but I did enjoy it for what it was. But yeah, Wait and Hope is truly a top tier Hermione fanfic for sure. Next up, speaking of Harry Potter related things, I recently read Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton. If you don't know, or if you need a reminder, Tom Felton is the actor who played Draco Malfoy in the Harry Potter films. And so this is his life story, but also a big part of this book, of course, is the filming of the Harry Potter films, that whole experience, because that is a huge part of Tom's life. And oh my God, I loved this memoir so much. First of all, the audiobook is definitely the way to go, because Tom himself narrates it, and I thought he did a phenomenal job with the audiobook, with the narration. I loved getting a real sense of who he is as a person. Also, like, side note, I didn't realize that him and Emma Watson are very close in real life. Emma Watson actually wrote the foreword for this memoir, and I loved that so much. It was just so heartfelt. You could tell that the two of them are very, very close friends. And I just loved getting a glimpse of what it was like working on the set of these films. The way that Tom was talking about all the other actors, all the amazing actors that he got to work with. I was thinking about this other day because I recently rewatched all the Harry Potter films. Like, there are so many incredible seasoned actors in those films. It's unreal how many amazing actors are in those films, right? And so like that was really cool. And like hearing Tom talk about like things like the sets and the costumes and the makeup, all of that stuff, and you know, what it was like to be a celebrity, you know, to be a part of this film franchise, even though he wasn't, you know, one of the golden trio, he wasn't one of the main characters, but he was a very important part of the films. And yeah, this was just so wonderful. And it has put me back in a Harry Potter era. Like I said, I rewatched the films recently and I am rereading the books at the moment. I'm in the middle of rereading Chamber of Secrets and I'm just having a great time. I am back in my Cassie Mint era, guys, and I am so excited. Cassie Mint is a very prolific author. She writes romance novellas. I call her like a lighter, more palatable version of Jessica Kane because her novellas are not nearly as unhinged or bonkers. They're just really sweet and sexy romances. They will give you that boost of serotonin that we all need, you know, and I haven't loved one of her novellas in a very long time. Actually, I was obsessed with her in like, I want to say 2021, 2022. I was giving most of her novellas 5 stars. And then in 2023 was when, you know, I was picking up some novellas by her, but I was giving them like 3 or 4 stars. I had gotten to a point where I just kind of stopped reading her novellas because I felt like maybe I just didn't enjoy her writing anymore. But then I saw in a recent newsletter that she sent out that she released this novella called Kissing Lessons. This is her newest release. This one had such a fun premise that I couldn't resist and download it off of Kindle Unlimited and read it immediately. The premise is that we have our heroine, she's in college, and her parents are making her get a tutor even though she really doesn't need one. She's actually very smart, but her parents think that she's stupid. And so our hero is a TA and he is tutoring her, I think in physics, something science related. And so once he realizes that she knows all about this stuff already, she doesn't need a tutor, they decide to have lessons of a more scandalous sort. And the hero is super shy, so it's actually the heroine who brings up having these fun little like kissing lessons, and it's just so sweet, so swoony. I had butterflies in my stomach like the whole time, and just like the perfect amount of sexy as well. This is probably my favorite of the 3 novellas that I've read of hers recently, but I also really loved Dear Hattie. This one is more of a workplace rivals, 2 lovers. We have our hero Wesley and then our heroine Hattie. They work in like this workspace together. They don't work for the same company. I think, yeah, he works for a podcast company. She runs like this Dear Hattie like self-help column, advice column. And so Wesley loves getting under Hattie's skin. He loves teasing her, but at the beginning of this novella, she's upset about something. And so he immediately is just like really sweet to her, and he like buys her a pretzel and coffee and just like wants to talk to her. But she's suspicious of his motives, given that usually he's just like teasing her all the time. So yeah, this one was just so fun, really sexy, really sweet, swoony, as I said. What I also love about Cassie Mint's heroes, at least the ones in these last few novellas that I've read, like her heroes are all in. They fall first and they fall hard and they are ready to commit right away. Like, I can't remember which of the 3 novellas it was, but like the hero was straight up like, I want to get married whenever you're ready. Okay, thanks, bye. Like, you know, like that's just how it is, you know? All of these novellas are under 100 pages, so you will fly through them. And as you can see, like, I cannot help but smile when I'm talking about these novellas. So most of these other books are fantasy and fantasy romance. As you guys may know, if you've been following me for a little while, if you've been watching my content for a little while, I am just in a fantasy mood. That is most of what I've been reading in the past few months, though I do have a couple of contemporaries on here as well. But first up, I have to bring up Sapphire Flames by Ilona Andrews. First of all, we need to discuss this cover. I feel like not enough people talk about how beautiful and amazing the covers for this series are. This is book 4 in Ilona Andrews' Hidden Legacy series. Ilona Andrews is a husband and wife writing duo, and this series consists of 2 trilogies, essentially. Books 1 and 3 are about Nevada and Rogan, and then books 4 through 6 are about Alessandro and Catalina, and then there is a novella that connects the 2 trilogies. So, oh my god, I feel like not nearly enough people read this series or talk about this series. I know a few of my bookish friends that love Ilona Andrews, but like, I feel like their books should be more hyped than they are. These are just amazing urban fantasy romance books. I am interested in reading their Kate Daniels series. I've heard that that one is more urban fantasy with a romance subplot, whereas these books are truly like urban fantasy romance. So basic synopsis, this takes place in a world very much like our own, specifically in Houston, but in the mid 1800s, there was this serum known as the Osiris serum that was developed that gave people supernatural and magical abilities. And so now it's several generations later, and there are these houses of families with specific magical abilities. And so we have Catalina, who is now the head of her family's house, and she also is running her family's private investigation firm. So Catalina gets this new client who is tasking her with solving her mother and sister's murders. And so Alessandro comes into the mix because he has very interesting connections with these murders as well. And so they are solving these murders together. And oh my god, this book was so amazing. Catalina and Alessandro are characters that we have met in previous books, and I was already so hyped for them to get their own story in this trilogy because the dynamic between the 2 of them is everything. Alessandro is such a fun hero because he comes off as very flirty, very irreverent, yet he is a badass. Oh my god, his abilities are crazy. Like, he can nullify other people's powers, but he also has other really interesting abilities. And then Catalina, she is known as a siren. Basically, she can make anyone fall in love with her, and over the years she's had to work really hard to control that power, because if uncontrolled, people will do like crazy shit in order to be with her. Like, for instance, when she was a baby, a nurse tried to kidnap her from the hospital. So yeah, like, they both just have such interesting abilities. I love how incredibly smart and competent Catalina is, and that way she reminds me a lot of Nevada, who is her sister, but she's the heroine of the first 3 books of the series. And like, I am just obsessed with Ilona Andrews' characters. There are amazing side characters in this as well. Like, all of Catalina's family, they are just so funny, and I love them all so much, especially Catalina's grandmother. Oh my god, she is everything. But there is just so much to love about this book, to love about this series. I am definitely planning on continuing on and reading Emerald Blaze really soon, now that I'm talking about this book again, because it is reigniting my love for this series and for these characters. Real quick, I do want to bring up House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 3rd book in her Crescent City series. I did come out with a reading vlog completely dedicated to my reading experience of this book. I will link that up in the cards above. That vlog is spoiler filled. You have been warned. All the spoilers are in that video. This book was crazy epic. It was everything I could have wanted from this 3rd installment. I love the way that this ended this part of the story. I'm very curious to see how this series is going to continue, because as far as I know, this is not the end of the Crescent City series, so we will have to see. Yeah. Just so many crazy things happened in this book. The last like 150 pages of this I think actually broke my brain. Like, I think I had to recover for like a few days after I finished this. I will say that Bryce and Hunt are not my absolute favorite Sarah J Maas couple, but I still enjoy them for who they are. And there are so many other amazing characters in this book and in this series. And yeah, like this truly gave me everything I could have wanted from this installment. I still think that House of Earth and Blood is my favorite book of the series. I think it always will be my favorite book of the series, but I really, really loved this book as well. If you have been watching my content lately, you knew this book and this series was gonna come up. I have to talk about the War of Lost Hearts trilogy by Carissa Broadbent. Truly one of my new all-time favorite fantasy romance series now. Like, oh my God. I am still reeling from finishing this series. I finished the third and final book like a week or so ago, and I don't think I fully recovered. This is another series that kind of broke my brain a little bit, especially the second and third books. There are so many things going on in this series. It's just so epic. It's just so well written. Wow. I can truly say that I have never read a series quite like this before, and I don't know that I'll ever read a series quite like this ever again. It truly has its own unique feel to it. The basic premise of this first book is that we have Tisana, who's pictured here. She's a slave at the beginning of the book, and she has been saving money to buy her own freedom from the man who owns her. But when she tries to actually buy her freedom, he refuses, and a physical confrontation starts between him and Tisana, and her magic manifests, and she ends up accidentally murdering the man who owns her. So she seizes her chance to get out of this awful situation, and she decides to pledge herself to this organization known as the Orders. This is an organization of magic wielders who are powerful enough to take down all of these awful people that have slaves in her home country. And so she is assigned to Max, who is the hero of our story, to be mentored by him. But meanwhile, he wants nothing to do with the Orders anymore. He was a part of this organization for a very long time, but he has a very tragic past. And so this becomes a reluctant mentor-mentee relationship, turns into a friends to lovers romance, and it is truly one of the most beautiful and stunning romances that I have read in a fantasy novel in a very long time. Oh my God, Max and Tisana are like my babies now. Like, I will protect them at all costs. I love this couple with my heart and soul, and even though they fall for each other by the end of this first book, Carissa Broadbent does an amazing job of further developing their relationship and their romance in the other two books of the series without having them break up for some reason or have a fight or have a conflict or anything like that. I feel like there are a lot of fantasy series out there. I've heard that the Fourth Wing series is like this, where like the characters fall in love in the first book, and then in the second book they break up, they have a fight, and like most of the second book is them fighting, and that just sounds really annoying to me. I remember that being the case in the From Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout as well, but rest assured that that is not the case in this series. Carissa Broadbent truly just did a phenomenal job of writing this romance in a way that like I was just eating it up. Any little scene that we got where the two of them were on page alone together, like, oh my God, I couldn't read it fast enough, you know? The fantastical elements in this are truly incredible and next level. Also in book 2, which is called Children of Fallen Gods, there is this third POV that is incorporated into the story, and it just adds so much to the story, so many layers. It makes the story so like morally interesting because we're following so many different characters from different backgrounds who have different morals. I'm trying to be vague. I don't want to spoil anything. But just know that the series is very complex. Also, there is absolutely no filler in this series. I feel like there are a lot of fantasy trilogies out there where the second book is a lot of filler, and the whole purpose of the second book is just to set up the third and final book, and rest assured that is not the case with this series. Like, every page counts and it is stunning. This is a series that I know I'm going to be thinking about for a long time, and I could go on and on and on about this series forever if you let me, but I'm going to stop myself. Next up, I do have a couple of contemporary novels that I really loved recently. The first one is not a romance novel. This is Carrie Soo is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this book centers around Carrie Soo, our main character. She is a tennis player, and at one point in her career, she becomes the best women's tennis player in the world. And we see basically her whole life, how she grows up to become a professional athlete, and how at a certain point she had to retire because tennis players can really only play professionally for so long before like their knees give out, for instance, or something like that, and they have to get surgery. And that's kind of what happened to Carrie. I think she had to get knee surgery, and so she retired in her early 30s. And so then at the age of 37, she decides to come back to professional tennis. She wants to try to win another big title. So that would be like the US Open, Melbourne, something like that. I know that there are 4 big titles in women's tennis. I think Taylor Jenkins Reid does a phenomenal job of writing female characters that are a little bit morally gray. They're not like your perfect likable heroines, right? And I just love how complex these characters are. In that way, Carrie Soo definitely reminds me of Daisy Jones and Daisy Jones and the Six, and Evelyn Hugo and the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Just such an interesting character. I could not help but fly through this book. I got so invested in Carrie's story, which is so interesting to me because I'm so not a sports girly, especially tennis. I have never been someone that has wanted to watch tennis, but I just could not help but be on the edge of my seat for all of these different matches that Carrie was playing. And I related to Carrie so much because she is someone who truly has devoted her entire life to this craft of tennis, right? And I am someone that for a very long time, pretty much my entire life was dedicated to my music career, my performing career. If you don't know, I'm a professional opera singer, and I'm also a musical theater performer and singer. And there was definitely a point in my life where like, that's all that mattered to me was my career. And it's just so interesting what that does to a person's psyche when you put all of your worth into your work and your career, you know? So yeah, this was just a fascinating novel. So well done, so well written. This is yet another book that I feel like I'm gonna be thinking about for a very long time. Next up, I have Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is hands down my favorite Ali Hazelwood book at this point. Oh my God, this was so good. So we have our heroine Elsie, and by day she's an adjunct professor in physics, but by night she offers her services as a fake girlfriend to whoever books her, essentially. And so at the beginning of this book, she is fake dating this one guy, but then our hero is actually this guy's brother. Our hero is named Jack. And so the main part of this story is that Elsie is a finalist to get a tenured position at MIT, and our hero Jack is also a tenured professor at MIT. And so this is definitely a hate to love story, but it's really one-sided. Like Elsie like hates Jack's guts, and for various different reasons, whereas Jack is just kind of like entertained by Elsie's hatred of him. And Jack is just such a fun hero from Ali Hazelwood, because Ali Hazelwood usually writes like grumpier, broodier heroes, whereas Jack is definitely more like extroverted. He's more fun. He's more like teasing, I guess you could say. And one of the things that I loved about this book is how Jack is just like the best communicator, and he constantly encourages Elsie to be clear with him, be upfront with him about her feelings, her thoughts and her feelings, and her likes and her dislikes and things like that. Like, wow, this is like the ultimate romance book to read if you hate the miscommunication trope. Oh my God. And oh, I just I loved the way that these two fell for each other, especially Jack, because Jack definitely falls for Elsie first, and he falls hard. And oh, it was just wonderful. It was wonderful. Definitely my favorite Allie Hazelwood book to date. So, so, so good. Next, I do want to quickly mention the Shepherd King duet by Rachel Gillig. I talked about this duet a lot in one of my recent reading vlogs. I'll link that up in the cards above. But book 1 is One Dark Window. Book 2 is Two Twisted Crowns. This is a series that centers around our main character, Elspeth. This magic system is really interesting. There are these cards known as Providence cards. They look like tarot cards, and there are 12 different types of Providence cards, and they each have a very specific type of magic. Now, anybody can wield these cards, but most, if not all, of these cards are owned by either members of nobility or the royal family of this kingdom of Blunder. This has a very gothic and eerie feel to it. There is this mist that has been spreading for years and years and years, and if you get caught in the mist without a charm of some kind, you will go crazy, you might die. This mist definitely reminds me of the Shadowfold in the Grishaverse by Leigh Bardugo. And so Elspeth, she touches what is known as a nightmare card when she's a child, and the spirit of that card now lives in her mind. And then one night Elspeth is walking home in the woods, and she comes across this mysterious highwayman who ends up being Raven, our hero. There's also another romance in this series that I really, really enjoyed. The gothic atmosphere and setting was just immaculate in my opinion. Like, this duet, it's all about the vibes. All about the vibes. The story that's told is, I would say, pretty simplistic, but I thought very well done for what it is. And like, the setting was incredible. Like I said, I could go on and on about that for days. Really enjoyed the two romances that are featured in this duet. I think this is a really great duet to read if you're dipping your toe into fantasy in general, because like I said, the magic system is very easy to understand, and the story is as well. There's even some slight like horror elements to this story as well, and I thought that that was very well done. So yeah, I really loved this duet. Would highly, highly, highly recommend it for sure. One last book I want to talk about. This is a very, very recent read for me. This is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I just finished this like the other day. This is a YA fantasy romance trilogy. This is the first book, of course. Book 2 is coming out in July. There's actually a novella set to come out at the end of April, which is really exciting. But this is a fantasy series that I will tell you right now, it is very, very, very heavily inspired by the Hunger Games. I know that that is going to annoy some readers. I personally was very entertained by that idea. But we have Peyton, our main character. She is what is known as an ordinary, so she doesn't have any magical abilities. This takes place in a fantastical society where we've got ordinaries and then we have elites. Elites have powers. And so the king of this kingdom has basically outlawed ordinaries from the main city of the kingdom. And so at first he just banished all of the ordinaries from this city, but now he's just executing any ordinaries that are found. And so Peyton has been posing as a psychic so that she doesn't get executed. And then we have Kai, who is a prince of this kingdom, and he is what is known as the enforcer. So he has been trained pretty much his whole life to be the main enforcer of the laws of this kingdom, and that includes torturing people and executing ordinaries. So there are these trials known as the purging trials, which are definitely very reminiscent of the Hunger Games. These trials occur every 5 years, and of course it's only teenagers that participate, again, reminiscent of the Hunger Games. And so very early on we find out that both Peyton and Prince Kai end up being a part of these trials. And so a big part of this story is the romance between Kai and Peyton. I will say that this book definitely gives like 2012 YA fantasy romance vibes in like the dialogue between Kai and Peyton. It's kind of cliche. Some readers might find it to be cringy. I personally was here for it. I was into it. I was entertained. But I could definitely see how some people would like hate the dialogue between these two. And then there's also a love triangle element because Kit, who is Kai's brother and the heir to the throne, is also falling for Peyton. And so that was really fun to read about as well. There were definitely parts of this book where I was just so entertained. I personally really enjoyed reading about the purging trials. And now I just want to reread the Hunger Games series. So, you know, there's that. Also the end of this, oh my God, the end of this was everything, because I feel like now Kit and Kai are going to enter their like villain eras, and I am so here for it. And I just can't wait to see how this story develops in the next book. So that is going to be it for books that I have read recently that I am absolutely obsessed with. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to discuss any of the books that I brought up in this video. Also, if you got to this point in the video, I would love it if you would leave a star emoji in your comment. And with all that being said, I would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe. And I thank you so much in advance if you do. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!